Maayong adlaw! Welcome to Season 3 of Pilipinx in Wellness. I am your host, Cheryl Samson Ramirez. In our last episode, we spoke with Pauline Montemayor for Mental Health Awareness Month to discuss mental health awareness from an East Coast perspective. We hope that you found it helpful. This month, we're launching into our physical wellness trilogy, starting with cyclists Nelson Raboy and Jordan Laxamana. Before we begin, we'd like to mention that we uphold and honor this safe space to share. We ask everyone to pose comments and questions on our platform in a peaceful and respectful manner. Our pre-recorded episodes are accessible through our Pilipinx in Wellness YouTube channel. The audio recordings are available via Apple Podcasts and Spotify. All views discussed are for informational and educational purposes only. It is not meant to be medical advice. Always consult with your healthcare practitioner for your particular condition, especially before starting any exercise or new health program. For this episode, I'd like to introduce our guest speakers, Nelson Raboy and Jordan Laxamana. Welcome to the podcast, guys.
Thanks so much for having us.
Hi, I'm honored to be here.
We're excited this season to expand globally and invite you both on. Jordan from Canada, our northern neighbor, and Nelson, who has family in Hawaii. We'd like to typically open our episodes with one of the first questions you're asked when someone finds out you're Pilipinx or Filipino. Where is your family from in the Philippines, and where are you currently streaming from, in case that's different from where you're residing?
So, my family on both sides are from Cebu, and I recently found that out later in life when I thought I was Ilocano, since most people from Hawaii are Ilocano. But yes, and then I am actually broadcasting from Long Beach, California.
Nice. And you have family in Hawaii too, right, Nelson?
Pretty much all my family on both sides are from Hawaii. And I probably have maybe 3 or 4 aunts and uncles from each side in the States, and then everybody else is back there.
Yeah, what islands?
So my mom is from Lanai, and my dad is from Oahu.
Cool.
North Shore Oahu, just to be specific.
We don't know too many people in Lanai, so that's kind of cool. What about you, Jordan?
Well, my mom is Batangueño. My dad from Manila, but by way of Pampanga. So recently found out actually that my great-grandfather, his family, like him and his immediate family, my grandfather and everything, they were from Pampanga, and then they moved a little bit further up north. The name of the town skips me, but apparently my last name, Laxamana, used to be Laksa, right? Rather than LAX.
Oh, cool.
And when they moved, my great-grandfather realizes, like, hey, so there's a bunch of other Laxamanas with KS, so we're all going to change it to X so that we know who our clan is. So it was very recent, actually, that the name was changed. It was pretty hilarious.
That's interesting. Isn't there an Indonesian dish, laksa?
Yeah, so, like, Laxamana, like, I guess, nomenclature of Filipino last names is all over the place, right? But Laxamana kind of has its roots with Lakshman, who's the god of Raman in the Hindu epic of Rama. So that kind of continued on to an actual naval admiral rank in Malaysia, Laxamana.
Wow.
So it's kind of everywhere. It's an interesting thing.
Yeah, I think that's a testament to our Malay-Indonesian roots, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we're all tied together, right?
Yeah, for sure. And where are you currently streaming from, Jordan?
I'm streaming from Vancouver, or a suburb of which is called New Westminster. So a little bit south of Vancouver, and so just a little bit up north of you guys. Still West Coast, though.
West side of Canada.
Hell yeah.
Now, I, as well as our listeners, have a lot to learn from you both in regards to this topic on cycling and wellness. I'm personally excited to delve deeper and learn more from the both of you. What makes having you both on extra special is that you both don't just cycle as a hobby, but you both have devoted your passion and time into it as a part of your profession. Jordan, we'll start off with you and then Nelson, but this question goes out to the both of you. Explain to our community what you do for a living as it relates to cycling.
Yeah, so I'm actually a service manager over at a bicycle shop here in New Westminster called Cap's Bicycle Shop. Started as a mechanic, kind of just learned my way through, and then worked my way up. Well, for better or worse, but mostly for the better, because it's my whole thing is I love to fix things and just make them work again, right? And my brain just works with analyzing how things work, trying to figure out how they should work, and then make them work that way if they don't. So it just kind of fell into place, me and bikes, and just totally started off riding. And then I was looking at my bikes and man, I really want to fix this up. And also, it's cheaper when you fix it yourself. So I just kind of fell deeper and deeper into that. To now the point I'm managing the repair center of one of the busier shops here in New Westminster. So it's been quite the road, and many more to come.
And where's New Westminster in terms of location to Vancouver?
It's a little bit southeast of Vancouver proper, so you kind of follow. There's one road actually that is a direct connection from Vancouver to New Westminster. So the main street in Vancouver, if you follow that, eventually you kind of turn off of it. An offshoot of it is called Kingsway, and that Kingsway, you follow it, and it turns into 12th Street of New West. And I live on 12th Street, so I have a direct line from my apartment to downtown Vancouver Main Street.
Nice. And you, Nelson?
Yeah, it's just.
What do you do for a living as it relates to cycling?
I got into the industry at an early age, and I just never got out of it. So currently, I actually run a business that deals with service and repair, and it's specifically tilted towards law enforcement and private security. So I actually just walked in the door 20 minutes ago, later than I thought I would be from a job out here in Los Angeles, Chinatown actually, for their security guards. They bought a couple of bikes and I needed to build them, and that was my job for today. But over the years I've been in and out of different shops with different positions, but always a mechanic, at heart, like Jordan. I mean, I've been on the sales floor as well, and I would say I have split time, because in our industry you can't really just be a mechanic. It's one of the few jobs that still is an apprenticeship style, where you gotta put your time in, and you gotta have somebody show you. You can't just show up and be I'm gonna be a mechanic, and people are just gonna smile at you and say, that's nice, but you should be a salesman. And that's usually where they stick you first.
Yeah. So you know what you're doing, basically, and you become more familiar with the bikes that you're servicing.
I would say so, yeah. I mean, let's see. Shoot. I don't know if this is embarrassing, but my first job in the industry was 98. So
it's not embarrassing.
No? Okay,
we
good.
have a wide audience.
Okay, good. So I've been in the bike industry since 1998. Back when bikes didn't have suspension.
That just shows us that you know what you're talking about.
Okay, good.
And then, so it sounds like your business is mobile business. So what's your geographic range, I guess?
Currently, I run the shop out of my residence, and I do have an online style of sales, retail sales type thing. But when I go out in the field, I also do private calls too. But I want to say my furthest north client, as far as being in the field goes, is Wilshire, like Wilshire in the 405. which is technically UCLA area. And then my furthest account is San Diego. But I have sold things internationally through my website, as far as like products like that people need regarding cycling in general. So.
And then Jordan, do you mainly service the Vancouver metro area, or do people come from like different regions as well to your bike shop?
Yes and no. I mean, we're mostly servicing kind of the Vancouver metro area, especially the immediate vicinity of New Westminster, like suburbs like Burnaby, Coquitlam, Surrey. All of those are just kind of encircling us here at New West. But because of the age of the shop, like we're turning 90 this year, so it's like it's an old shop. So there's a lot of history and a lot of folks that just come in and like I bought my first bike when I was a kid, just when you were at the location just down the street, and I'm like, that's awesome. Like thank you so much for coming back, right? So I get phone calls of folks that are like hundreds of miles away, and they're like, I bought a bike from you guys like 20 years ago. I'm going to be in town, and can you guys fix it up? I'm like, yeah, I would love to see it. I'm like, bring the bike on in. We'll have a look at it. I'll look at the old cap sticker that's on it, and then there's a story behind each one. So like that's kind of our thing. We're a very general shop, a very family oriented shop. So a lot of families come through, and it's just generations on generations. Like dad got his first bike from his dad, and now he's bringing his kid in to get his first bike. So
it's really wholesome.
It's really cool stuff to do. Yeah, super wholesome there, and yeah, it's a fun environment. That's for sure.
Cool.
That's totally cool. Like, that's what the part I miss about being in a shop is like that type of interaction,
So yeah, I've been with Caps for just like the last like little over 5 years, right? And like my first bike was from a Caps location, not the same location that I'm at now, but from a Caps location in Surrey, like 5-10 minute drive away. And then I find out later after I get, my mechanic position at this Caps in New West, my uncle says that his first job when he moved to Vancouver from the Philippines was as a mechanic for Caps in New West. So it was like a crazy full circle moment of like, wow, like, this shop has like 90 years of history, so it like has touched everyone in the area, and to be a part of that is something cool. Like we've definitely evolved since then. We're arguably a different shop than we've been in the last while, but like that's how it goes. To be human is to grow and to flow.
Yeah, so you're practically Cap's legacy.
Yeah, kind of part of it. Like one thing that kind of trips me out of it was when the owner of our location, he like takes me into his office and he's like, you're the service manager. I want your input on the next sticker that's going to go on the bike. So it's like, wow, I have influence now in like the next history of this franchise, this 90-year-old shop. So yeah, like that's
wow.
clout, but it's also like trying to combat that imposter syndrome too, right? So
oh yeah,
but it's like
so you didn't know your uncle worked for them until you started working for them?
Exactly. I had no idea. I didn't even know that he was big into biking until like a couple of years after I like really got started to do all of my long rides, and then I see on Facebook that him and my cousin, his daughter, are riding a lot. I think they're in Iowa, and then like after they heard, hey, you're working at Caps, he's like, yeah, George, my first job in Vancouver was at Caps in New West. I'm like, what? Why didn't you guys tell me?
That is crazy. Wow.
Wait, your uncle was flossing at that point.
Basically.
So have you ridden with him since?
No, I haven't.
Like,
actually.
have you guys?
I need to have a ride.
That'd be cool.
Like, he's out in Iowa, so the next time that he comes out to visit,
yeah,
like we'll go for a ride, or I'll make a trip out there or something.
Wow, that'd be so interesting. I wonder if the land there is like flat. So
it's super flat there. It's like all hills. Very.
It'll be like, Jordan, I can't do the hills here. It's too much for me. It's too much.
I mean, like, I don't know, Nelson. One of the big modifications a lot of customers come into my shop is, can you put a wider range cassette on this bike? Because they want to be able to climb better. And that's like all age groups, whether you're like a younger road cyclist or, a retiree that just wants to get back into cycling. It's always, I want a bigger range on this so I can climb easier. And it's and I'm always of the mindset of, you just got the bike, ride the bike, give it a couple of weeks, your legs will be stronger than you ever thought they would be.
Break it in like a new pair of shoes. So are there different cap stores in the, it sounds like it? Is it only in Vancouver or?
Only in Vancouver. I mean, there was a time when there were so many cap stores that they started to open shops just to compete with themselves. Like it was what they called the Empire Days. There were a lot of stores
That's funny.
all across the Lower Mainland, all across the it was a good problem to have. But Caps has kind of settled into your classic mom and pop shop. There's still a few locations around the Lower Mainland. There's one out in Richmond, one out in Langley, but we are one of two locations in like the immediate vicinity, and I don't think there's any more in Surrey or Vancouver.
Now, sounds like your cap wants to chime in and add to that. I was like, I don't know.
Yeah, that's Lily.
Yeah. Well, let's dive into your origin stories when you both decided to become cycling devotees and made this your passion. I remember when I learned how to first ride a bike at the local park down the street from where I grew up. I haven't forgotten how exhilarating that experience was and how good it felt when I was able to ride a two-wheel bike on my own without assistance. It's amazing how that muscle memory never leaves you. Tell us more about when cycling became a passion for you. And sorry, Nelson, you're cracking me up too. And when you decided,
I'm honored to be here.
And when you decided to transition this form of exercise from a hobby into a profession. Since we started with you, Jordan, on the last question, we'll start with you, Nelson, and alternate moving forward. So, Nelson, when did cycling become a passion for you, and when did you decide to transition this form of exercise from a hobby into a profession?
Well, man, it's good that you bring up the first time that you remember riding a bike, because
totally.
That's like, when you're that age, that's something that never leaves your mind, no matter where you're from, no matter, what ethnicity you are. Everybody remembers that. And
yes. It was at Royal Oaks Park when I was 6.
Did you even know the place?
Oh, yeah. Man, it's like the park down the street from where I grew up, that's why. And I remember the route.
That's awesome. I mean, I'm sure Jordan and I know even the name and make of the bike that we started on, because we're just that way.
Yeah,
but I mean, it started honestly like with the movie, really. I mean, I knew what biking was. I had a big wheel. Everybody had a big wheel, and I used to ride that thing until there were holes in the wheels, because that's what you did with a big wheel. So the foundation was already there about like pedaling something and going fast.
Yeah.
And I remember when I watched the movie E.T., there's a scene when they're running towards the end, and they're running from the cops or the FBI, and obviously E.T. makes them levitate. So that, when you're the age that I was like, what the hell?
Yeah,
what if I could do that?
Pre Back to the Future 2.
Pre Back to the Future 2, also a great series. But anyways, at the end of the scene, they land in the forest, because that's where E.T. is trying to meet his family.
Yeah.
And they do this synchronized skid in the movie. And for lack of better terms, I was like semi-turned on, and I was like, I need to do that. So I need to do that on a bike. And so the next day, I was not on my big wheel, but I asked my dad for a bike, and that Christmas I got a bike, my first bike, and I did skid outs all freaking day on learning to do skid outs. I mean, you can't just do skid outs, you still got to practice, so I fell a few times. But it all started with that movie. And then other movies came out about biking that solidified it. And then, you know, you get a little older and the training wheels come off, and then now you're going farther and you meet people that also ride, and it's like, oh yeah, you ride too? Let's do this. Let's freaking ride. And then you're building jumps, and then you're trying to like see who can do like the fastest or go the farthest or sprint the fastest or jump the biggest. And it's just, you know, downhill. I mean, shoot. There was no helmets back then either. So it was bad.
And then how did you take it from there into deciding, like, I really want to make this my job, my profession?
So there's a thing in our industry, I'm sure Jordan can attest to this. A lot of the coworkers that ended up in the bike industry, there's no specific type. It's all ethnicities, all ages, all socioeconomic. The one common thing is that mostly their plan A didn't really pan out, and they fell back into something they loved. And then now you're working in the industry, which is what happened to me. I actually didn't pan out. I graduated from the fire academy in '98, and while I was trying to test and get on a department, I ended up going back to school because I didn't get hired for maybe 5 or 6 years. This is back in the early 2000s when it was really hard to get in. And when I went back to school, I decided, like, you know, if I'm going to go back to school, I'm going to do something I love. And I got into the bike industry while I was taking classes. And I never got out of it, man. Graduated and everything. I just stayed in the bike industry. So, I mean, oh man.
Well, I mean, in a sense, you're putting out fires for riders now.
There you go. There you go. But when you mention, like, you know, you remember your first ride, that's one thing I miss in the shop is like helping kids get their first bike and to see their face the first time they ride their first bike. It's like, you know, you never forget that. None of us forget it. And it's like that little, I mean, we change lives, you know, for the good. And it's just that whole community thing that Jordan was mentioning earlier, and bettering yourself and keeping healthy, you know. It all ties into like why we stayed in.
Totally.
Type thing.
What about you, Jordan? So again, like, when did cycling become a passion for you, and then when did you decide to transition it from like being a hobby into a profession?
Yeah, so my origin story is fairly similar. I mean, riding on a big wheel, you know, skidding out, those big plastic wheels on the big wheel, and until you know the center of that wheel is starting to cave in with all the holes that you carve into it.
Totally.
And then also just riding around the neighborhood. Like I remember that bike that I got at that other location was a BMX. It was like a twin top tube BMX, all silver. I changed out the saddle for it from like this hard plastic thing to this nice comfortable saddle. And I remember learning to ride without any kind of training wheels, just going on that from the big wheel to that BMX, and then like, oh, I'm going, and my dad saying like, oh, it's all you, and then I realize he's not behind me anymore, and I'm like all the way down the block, and the block is starting to curve, so I have to follow along with that curve, and then at the end of that street is an intersection with cars, so I panic and turn left and go into the what's it called, sidewalk, and like totally bail, scratched up my knee, but like picked up the bike, started walking back, huge smile on my face, and like, you see me, I was riding my bike. Like, you know, it's those are the core memories that that riding really is like, that's what it is. And I remember with that particular BMX, me and my friends, we would always just explore the neighborhood. We like, I grew up in a neighborhood that's like, it was a pretty nice one. I was very privileged growing up because it was safe enough for us to just ride around, just me and my friends, like even me alone around the neighborhood, just alone. And we would actually go on the fringes of the development of the neighborhood, so where there's still trees and there's still like backwoods areas that you can kind of carve paths out of, and that's what we would ride. We would ride like these back pathways until it like becomes a sheer cliff where the river's on the other side, and like you can see
Wow.
it across.
Sounds beautiful.
It was gorgeous. Like the river I'm referring to, the Fraser River. It's like a huge river. You don't want to swim in it, but like that's like the place that we would grow up in, that I would that I'd like cut my teeth, for lack of a better term, like to ride. And I remember that, like I said, it was always on the fringes of right where they were building the neighborhood. So like all my friends, they all had mountain bikes. I was the only one with a BMX. So they would go on these trails and just slaughter me. Like I'd barely be able to keep up. But we would go into construction yards where they're building up houses before they put down the foundation, just piles of massive amounts of dirt, and we just go up and down these mountains. And one of those rides, I ended up breaking my BMX. Had to ride it home with like a broken saddle, and then I took a break. I took a break after that, just purely out of shame, because I was never one of those kids that like Nelson, you'd see folks that would go out and skid, like, oh, I have to do that. No, I was scared. My first experience riding a bike, I already bailed and scratched up my knee. That's not a fun experience, but I always loved to explore. I'd always just love to ride and ride and ride, and like come back when the sun's starting to set. That kind of thing. That's the kind of riding that I always enjoyed as a kid, right? So I had forgotten that for a while until I was an adult. And this girl that I was dating at the time, she had a bike and she was a commuter. And I was always like, oh, that's cool. I'd love to get back into riding again. And she convinced me. She's like, here, why don't you get a bike? They're only like $200 or something. So I picked up a bike and we started riding again. And I never stopped. Like she ended up like moving and all this stuff, and we broke up, whatever. But I kept on riding, and I just fell in love with it. And in terms of translating it into my profession, I always went into school for like physics, astronomy, all that stuff, just analyzing, trying to figure out how things work, trying to figure out how the universe worked and all that stuff. And it still intrigues me, like to this day. I still love that. That's just how my brain is wired. And I went into, like Nelson said, kind of like when the plan A doesn't quite pan out. So not able to progress through my schooling to get into like the real physics stuff. I just started to pick up odd jobs here and there. And mostly it was in electronics, because that's where a lot of my friends were. I played a lot of video games. A lot of my friends were in programming, or they were in IT and everything. So I picked up jobs in customer service, troubleshooting stuff on computers, actually going into IT and all that. And then finally, when I realized that tech tree, that career path just wasn't for me, I decided to quit. Didn't have no parachute or anything, just an idea of maybe I'll go into bikes and become a mechanic and try and figure that out. I can learn, I have it in my head. If there's anything that I set my mind to, I can learn it. And yeah, I printed out a bunch of resumes, jumped on my bike, and biked from my apartment all the way to downtown Vancouver and dropped off resumes at every bike shop along the way. And one of the last ones actually took me seriously, because he saw that I had that analytical mind, that analytical mindset, and actually believed in me and gave me a job, and worked my way up from there.
Wow. So now you can go on rides with your next partner and point out the constellations and talk about the planetary formations, because you have that background too.
Pretty much. That's my goals.
And knowing in Vancouver you have so much, I guess, just greenery there, that outdoor life, so you don't have as much light obstruction that we do here in the cities.
Yeah, a bit, but all the best places are on top of a mountain, and convincing someone to ride up a mountain is a daunting task.
Right, unless they have a mountain bike. All right, let's move into breaking down next the different bikes there are out there, because there's just so many, right? There's tricycles, that includes the ones that we see in kindergarten playgrounds to the ones that we see in the Philippines. There's unicycles, right? Road bikes, hybrids, fixies. You mentioned mountain bikes, electric bikes. exercise bikes, mopeds. Jordan, you mentioned you before we started recording that you also have a motorcycle, and the list goes on. So there's probably bikes that you both know about that I haven't even mentioned. I think we were talking when we were preparing for the show about even like bikes that triathletes use. So I'm curious, what bikes do you both preferably ride and why?
Uh, I can start. My main riding, because like I said, I'm still to this day not that much of a daredevil with my riding. So I mostly ride on the street. But I always have this distinction whenever telling folks like, oh, what kind of bike do you ride? Oh, I ride on the road. Oh, so you're a roadie. You ride those road bikes. You wear Lycra and all this stuff. I'm like, no. I ride the street. So the kind of bike that I have is a cyclocross bike that I've set up to be like one by, so there's no gears up front, only gears in the back. Very simplistic shifting and everything, nowhere near as precise as some of the road bike customers would like with all the electronic shifting. No, mine is a mechanic's bike for a mechanic, so everything's nice and simple. Everything's as I say, the pain in the A or pain in the ass that I am willing to work with. So yeah, that's the kind of riding that I do. Did a lot of bike messengering before I went full time as a service manager in my shop. I was doing part-time delivery on a bike, so that's kind of the type of riding that I really like is biking among cars, because that's pretty much where a bike is right along that line between walking and driving. So, I'm one of those guys that pushes that,
Well,
that, pushes that
that's
boundary.
oh my gosh, that's so scary out here. I mean, that like kind of goes into bike safety, but we'll talk
Mhm.
about that too. And you built your own bike, Jordan,
Yeah, that's
right?
right. Yeah,
I think that's pretty
built my own bike
fascinating.
from a bare frame. It was what's it called? That's the most recent one that I built. I've built a few bikes nowadays, but like this one was a build to replace another bike that I got into an accident with, and this one is like, I want to build this up as my philosophy. Everything that I learned, I'm going to distill into this bike. So that's what I'm currently riding.
Nice. And then what about you, Nelson? What do you preferably ride and why?
I do a little bit of everything. I mean, I want to say the majority of riders where I reside, a big majority are commuters, and that can range from 1 mile commutes to 40-mile commutes, and all of their bikes are built a little differently specifically for those distances. And I myself have a commuter bike, one that is like low quality and able to be beat up and not stolen for when I ride, like to get coffee or to the bar. And then I have a nice commuter bike that I would commute to work on when I could, or run errands type thing. Other than that, I also ride a lot of mountain. So there's everything from the local trails to, we have resorts out here, kind of like Whistler, but here at Big Bear and Snow Summit, they actually, when the snow melts, they convert the chairs to take bikes up, and then you can actually not climb up the mountain, but then you can also descend all day with a lift ticket. And there's different degrees of runs. That generally is called downhill. Like out here, we refer to that as downhill. There's black diamond runs where you could kill yourself,
My
and then
God.
there's plenty of normal riding where it's not dangerous at all, but very fun. But there's some things up there that are just not meant to be ridden. Like I don't touch really black diamonds, but I do a lot of the blue runs, which are just fine. I also do road with the Lycra stuff, and then I do a lot of cyclocross riding, which is a road bike meant to be ridden off road, which is a genre of, I guess you could say, mountain, but because you're on a drop bar and you don't have suspension, you're getting the same adrenaline rush at half the speed, which is why I like it, because you don't have like suspension or anything else to help you. And yeah, I don't know. I mean, it's a weird genre, but I do a little bit of that too. But then I also do like, I still have my first BMX bike that I tool around on, but I can only do that for so long because I'm
still skidding.
I'm heavier than I was when I was a kid.
Is Lycra a thing? Like, I mean, obviously it's a thing, but is it essential to like wear when you're a roadie? I guess.
It depends on what you're trying to do. It all depends.
Depends on exactly.
Yeah.
Depends on where you're riding, what kind of riding, and also like the crew that you're with.
Right.
I see. Interesting. Now, do you find that the bikes that you sell and repair are they the same as the ones you're both riding, or do you sell and repair different bikes than the ones that you prefer to ride? What's selling the most at the moment, and what are you repairing the most at the moment?
You want to go ahead, Duncan?
Currently, since I'm not in a shop, most of what my clients use for law enforcement or for security patrol are just mountain style bikes for the durability and the ease of operation, so to speak. But when I was in a shop, I mean, on the West Coast, I'm sure including Canada, like with the weather that the West Coast has, everybody is on something. You know, it's not like, oh, you want to buy this type of bike? We'll talk to him. He knows those bikes. We all have to know everything because there's so much of everybody that wants specific bikes, mountain bikes, road bikes, commuter bikes. But commuter bikes, that's just the biggest class right now. I mean, I would say so. Because, you know, people are trying to be healthy. They're trying to, like, get workouts in. They don't need to spend, like, money on a performance bike, you know. And they don't want, like, the heaviness of a mountain bike. And they want to ride it with their kids or their spouses, you know. So they get these commuter bikes, which are great, you know. And you could be healthy. You could ride for an hour and not feel demolished, you know, on these bikes. If you go through a shop, you know.
Yeah, and I remember we saw an increase in bike sales during like the early part or the peak of the pandemic, right? All of a sudden there were like even shops where they didn't even have any bikes to sell because everyone was buying them. Was that the same thing for you, Jordan?
Oh, yeah. The pandemic, like, the bike industry exploded. It was massive during 2020. Like, what's it called? I remember the first time that I realized like that things had changed during the pandemic. I was working on the computer. I was supposed to be doing some website stuff for our online store, and then all of a sudden I hear my boss, "Jordan, get out of here! I need you to fix this flat or whatever." And I come out the door, and he's outside under a tent, and he's got this line of people just reaching all the way down the block, and all of them are there for service because they want to get, you know, they realized, oh, biking is the only thing that I can do during the pandemic, so I have a bike in a basement or I have a bike in a garage. I'm going to take it out and you know, start to ride again, because that's all I can do. Everything else is closed down. And yeah, like it was insane. Just sheer amount of bikes that were sold, and it was like every kind of bike. So like kids bikes that we sell a lot of, Strider bikes were fairly popular, and then the same thing, like a lot of commuter bikes, a lot of hybrid bikes, a lot of just towny cruisy bikes, just anything that folks, they really wanted to get outside, enjoy the sun, you know, get some fresh air, and
totally.
just be on two wheels, right? So there was a lot of that. We also sold a lot of mountain bikes too, because the Vancouver area is huge for mountain biking, especially with like North Shore mountains, like around Squamish or Whistler. So mountain biking is massive out here. So there's a lot of full suspension mountain bikes out here, a lot of hardtail mountain bikes that are sold out here. Yeah, even though we're a general shop, we still have to carry like a selection of crazy downhill tires and all of that.
And so that's still the case. As we're still, it's like moved into the endemic, I guess, supposedly,
Yeah,
right? So are you still like selling and repairing the same type of bikes?
definitely still repairing the same kind of bikes. A lot of the bikes that we sold during the pandemic are now coming back for their regular maintenance, which is great. I want to see those bikes come back. I don't want to see them back in like 10, 20 years of neglect. So it's good to see a lot of the bikes that we sold coming back for repairs. In terms of like general sales as well, we're in a period that I like to call like the COVID hangover, where things are starting to slow down for sure. They're kind of settling back into the 2019 like pre-pandemic busyness and whatnot. At least when it comes to sales, but I'm still seeing a pretty not pretty steady level of busyness for service and repairs, because everyone that bought a bike still has those bikes and still wants to get out and ride them, even if it's been sitting for like over the winter.
And some people are hanging their Lycra now back in their closet during the COVID hangover.
Some folks are for sure, yeah. But then there are also other folks that that I'm encountering that got into riding during the pandemic, and now they're competing in races, or they're getting ready to do like a triathlon or an Ironman, and like for everyone that kind of retired out of biking because it just wasn't for them, there were other folks that found out that this is what they love to do. I had a customer that came in like a couple of weeks ago, and like her athletic background was javelin, like track and field stuff. And
Oh, wow.
yeah, so like that was her background, and she entered into this program is like kind of sponsored by one of the local banks, but this program where they kind of analyzed her athletic acumen and figured out what she was great at, and they suggested, hey, you should try riding a bike. Like there's the velodrome over in like North Burnaby, an indoor cycling track. And she did it, tried it out, and she fell in love with it. Now she's like winning road races, even though she started just last year. So like, some folks just got into it and like realized that it's their passion, right?
I guess
I
once
wish
an
I had
athlete,
that.
always an athlete.
Yeah.
I think we're at a good place to take a break, guys. So it's been a great first half talking with you both, and we're barely touching the surface about cycling and wellness. We're at the first half of of our segment together. Thank you all for joining us for our third episode of season 3. We're talking with Nelson Raboy and Jordan Laxamana. Feel free to take a quick stretch, refill your water or tea, which I'll be doing. We'll be right back after this quick break.
Yo, living for the love of the day. Ha, the way the sun to feel on my face. When we blowing trees up on the beach, she smile at me and time it cease, and then she put my hand on her waist. Ha, love me then just love who I am. I'm like Bond with a Caribbean tan. I ain't perfect and I'm hurting and I'm searching to be worth it. You'll forgive me, I'm the children of man. We live it, then we love it and then we leave it. And this shit, it ain't making no sense. We hit it and we rub it, we bust it and then say fuck it, and we wonder why she mad at the end. He got nothing but love, but I ain't him, hun. I got things to get done, is what it is, love. Seeing you rise just like a black sun, it's giving me life, and so I back up. A student and a teacher, a leaver and a believer, a seer and a seeker, essentially she a heater. I leave her cause I lead her these space and then make it realer, and I swear it to the stars, I ain't the thing that would defeat you. Yo, living for the love of the day. Ha, the way she got that look on her face. Rocking chucks and rolling blunts, the underground is what she bumps, and Cali smoking weed by the waves. Ha, love me then just love who I am. Yeah, you know it in the moment you laugh. I'm inclined to move your mind like Yamanaka, brown divine cocoa butter, honey and hash.
Welcome back to Pilipinx in Wellness. You were just listening to the first part of Honey and Hash by Khingz and Mic Flont off of their album Premium Smoke through their label Operation Take Over the World, also known as Auto. King's son is Jordan's godson, so he's practically like a brother-in-law to you, right,
Yeah.
Jordan?
What's up, King?
Thank you so much for this connection. You can help support Khingz and Mic Flont by following them on Facebook or on Instagram at Khingz, that's spelled Khingz, Otow, one word, and at Mic Flont, so spelled Micflont. You can find their music on most streaming platforms, including Bandcamp, Apple Music, Spotify, and Amazon. Shout out to our extended family of musicians out there laying down the tracks. Returning from our break, we've been talking with Jordan Laxamana and Nelson Raboy. Continuing the conversation from our first half, let's do a further breakdown of our episode titled Cycling and Wellness. How do you two personally see cycling as an important part of not only your personal wellness, but a physical activity that folks in our Pilipinx or Filipino community can adopt? I can share that for me personally, my mom's 85, and when I've talked to her, she's shared with me that she's incorporated her home stationary exercise bike as part of her own regular fitness routine. In areas like LA County, Los Angeles County, Ciclavia was formed to promote additional forms of public transportation, increase exploration in different neighborhoods that maybe one might not typically venture into, and address public health needs. Ciclavia itself was inspired by Ciclovia in Bogota, Colombia. I don't know if there's an equivalent in the Vancouver area, Jordan, but let's talk about how you both see cycling as an important part of this larger discussion of wellness within our community globally. Who'd like to go first on this one? It's pointing at you, Jordan.
So, I think cycling is huge and a great opportunity for a lot of folks in our community. Main reason is because it gets you out of the house, gets you moving. In a lot of 9-to-5 jobs, we spend a lot of time just sitting down, staring at a screen. Sure, you're sitting on a bike, but you're moving your legs, and also you have to be looking farther away than a screen in order to make sure that you're safe on the road or a path. Plus, it's just it gets the blood flowing. I know for myself, when I started cycling and biking biking regularly, it was to commute to work, because I don't drive, so I would take transit to and from work. Before, that was like a 45-minute commute, right? Every day, 45 minutes there, 45 minutes back. And taking that on a bus and a train, it's super passive. So just sitting there, it kind of felt like, that whole classic, I'm a sardine in a can, just waiting to be delivered. That's it, to and from work. And then I found that changing over to biking to work, not only, got me out of that sardine can, got me out of the petri dish that, people open mouth cough on buses and trains all the time, but, it got me out of that so I could have some fresh air, so I can get that circulation, that morning exercise, so that by the time I got to my job, I wasn't, dreading being there. I was actively pushing myself to go there. So in a way, it was reclaiming my commute. And that was a huge thing for me. And even though, 45-minute bus ride, you think that is going to take like an hour by bike. No, my route, I happen to be about 40 to 42 minutes by bike. And that's, what's it called? As fast as taking transit. So it was all basically a net gain, to commute by bike, because also I wasn't beholden to all the transit delays that could happen, right? So yeah, it was that combination of physical and mental well-being just from biking on as part of my work routine, biking to and from work, and then taking that outside of work. Now that I've okay, they got this one route. Now let's explore. Let's go all the way around the Lower Mainland. Let's try to do a full loop of the peninsula, just from that small beginning of going 12 kilometer commute to doing 100 or 200 kilometers. It opened the world. It opened the world to me. So I personally, I want everyone to feel that, right? I want everyone to kind of experience that opening of everything. And it's not just that same feeling that you get, oh, I'm gonna jump in my car and go on a road trip. you're actively participating. You're not just putting your foot down, not just, steering your steering wheel. You're actually pushing yourself there. It gives you so much respect for the topography and the layout of your city that now you actually know what the distances are. Things look super far away when you're just looking at it, when you're looking across the river. But when you bike there, you realize, hey, that's not that far at all. It really opens up the world. But yeah.
Yeah, and it's especially important, right, for our community to be active, especially because we have like high rates of diabetes, high blood pressure, and a lot of times like this form of exercise helps to combat that, right?
I mean, like I can have my mom as kind of an example. Like she's taking medication for diabetes, and I keep trying to get her to, like, hey, be a bit more active. Go out and walk some more, or ride a bike. She doesn't like to get sweaty. she's a classy lady, doesn't want to get sweaty. So like that's kind of one of those things. Like that, it's good to ride to kind of combat that, and that's one of the struggles. Trying to get my mom to be she's the ultimate goal. I want my mom on a bike.
Yeah, it's funny when you kept on talking about like sardines in a can. I couldn't stop thinking about legal.
Yeah, right. I'm just thinking.
Maybe that's my stomach talking. What about you, Nelson? Do you want to add to that?
I totally agree with Jordan. I mean, the whole notion of, bodies in motion stay in motion. The one thing that is good about cycling is that everybody generally knows what a bike is. So there's not like a foreignness to it. Everybody generally has a first time on a bike story, and what it comes down to is getting it in your schedule. Anything you do to burn calories, to work out, it starts with the want and then getting it into your schedule. I promise you, you do something, it doesn't even need to be cycling. You could walk. If you walk for half an hour on a day that you want to walk, I guarantee you're going to feel better after the walk. Guaranteed. With cycling, it is just exaggerated, because not only do you get the cardio, but you get, the dopamine hit like a runner gets. So you feel good on top of that. And because you're powering yourself, sometimes it doesn't even feel strenuous. You don't have to do strenuous riding to ride. Just riding to ride is starting. You gotta start somewhere, And I mean, shoot, if you can dedicate one day out of the week to ride your bike, let's say like a Saturday when you're off, instead of driving to the coffee shop, ride your bike to the coffee shop. It's like Jordan says, you might see things that you didn't even notice your city offered, in one way or another, or you might, find a really relaxing way to ride somewhere and not be stressed out in red lights and stop and go. You might actually like it,
Totally.
And there's recreational riding, there's riding for fitness, and then there's serious people that are trying to like build a certain style of health. You don't have to belong to any one, but I guarantee you dedicate one day a week first for a half an hour ride, and you will feel better after that ride. I promise. Also, it makes the beer taste better after you ride for some reason. I promise.
I mean, I heard some people too, like when they were working from homes. I've heard of people also joining meetings on their stationary exercise bike at home, and no one knew, but like they had their frame in the camera and they were actually pedaling while they were in their meetings. So that's kind of another way, like, you can get movement going. But I was gonna say, not only that, what's cool about cycling is when you do it outdoors, or as with any outdoor activity, you get vitamin D, right?
Totally.
And what we saw too is it's the natural form of getting vitamin D, and what we saw also during like the pandemic, or again, now we're in the endemic phase, we've actually seen a lot. I mean, my doctor told me that we've seen a lot more people having low levels of vitamin D because they were spending most of their time indoors, like quarantining. But at the same time, they weren't getting enough sun exposure. So that's another thing, right, that makes cycling, as an outdoor physical activity important, because those regular dosages of vitamin D also builds your immune system naturally. So just wanted to
Totally.
say that's another added benefit, right, to cycling.
Oh,
Totally.
100%. Back when I was doing delivery, just delivering food and whatnot down in downtown Vancouver, I swear my immune system was the strongest it had ever been. Like, just the amount of stuff that would kick up from the road, and I didn't want to catch a cold. Like, it was crazy. Like, just being active, having your blood flow is huge. And even then, I just kind of wanted to touch on, like, cycling is a lot easier than most folks realize.
Totally.
One of my former boss, one of his favorite anecdotes was, I believe there was a study. I never really looked into it. I really should, but there was a study back before where they tried to figure out what the most efficient mode of transportation was, or the most efficient mode of transport. And they found that, everyone says, well, the albatross, that bird that flies across the ocean, is the most efficient, right? Wrong. It's cycling. Cycling is even more efficient than an albatross flying, because, like, you put in your energy, but you also coast a lot too, right? Like, you don't have to be pedaling all the time. You're not always going up a hill, so there's a lot of coasting involved. So it's a lot easier than folks originally think. And a properly tuned bike is that much easier to ride because the bearings aren't all crunchy, slowing you down. You're not fighting all this stuff. A properly tuned bike will work with you and make it so much easier.
That's awesome. That makes your roles even more important.
I just want to say too that on a mental notion of riding, I always feel like it resets you and grounds you cognitively, because you may not be working out so hard that you're going to pass out, but you're still burning calories and you still have to concentrate, and you still you're having stimulus because you have to look for hazards, all the neurological pathways of your balance and your hearing, and all that stuff. You keep doing reps on that. All that stuff like contributes to feeling better and living better and just being overall in a better mood when you're at rest. You stress your body a little bit riding a bike, and you get to the point where you can use it as a tool to actually burn calories, mm-hmm. and use it as an exercise, and it's great. I mean,
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah, no.
100%. There's that combination of, like, the physical exercise of it, but just totally the mental aspect as well. And I'm not talking about, like, you're making your mental game harder so that you can ride harder rides. It's like, no, just the fact that you're not in traffic, the fact that you can take that side route or that path that not very many people are on, or that you can decide, you know what, I'm going to take a break right over here. There's a bench right there that's overlooking the water. I want to stop there for a second. And it's like, it's that taking control of exactly what's in front of you. And that is huge. Because a lot of times, especially in our day-to-day at work, we have our tasks. We're doing one thing, which leads into another thing. We have this other thing that's due next week, and blah, blah, blah. But when you're out on the bike, that's it. Where do you want to go?
Yeah.
It's entirely up to you.
I feel like you're going slow enough to not put your life in danger at certain times, but you're also going fast enough to where you have enough things to worry about that you forget about, your actual life, and you have a chance to, like, almost be meditative, and you're you're on the bike and you've got to accomplish this ride. You know, it's really therapeutic, I think. You know, I've had people say like riding a bike is cheaper than therapy. I've actually had people say that to me.
Probably depends on the bike.
Yeah, it totally depends on the bike.
But
I'm gonna throw in
bikes are cheap. Most bikes are affordable, so.
Yeah. What are the ranges for a good bike? Right. Price wise.
My suggestion, I always say this to friends, I always say this to customers, is if you're looking to buy a bike, at least up here in Canada with the way the prices are.
Yeah. Canadian dollar
is you want to budget around $600 to $750 to get a good bike. That'll either be a really good quality new bike, like, you know, just something.
Yeah.
One, rides well, has good components. Two, looks good, because that's an important thing. You want to make sure if you like the way the bike looks, you're going to want to ride it. So those two things, you know, you'll be able to get a good quality bike, or you spend half or a third of that to get a really good quality old bike, and then the rest of that money to tune it up to make it new again. Because you can find some really good gems out there that are used and just like neglected, and make them sing again. So like always.
That's like a lowrider concept.
Yeah, right. So it's like, you know, I would say budget around $600 to $750, because you can either get a good quality new bike or an amazing old bike that just needs to be cleaned up.
Same price range here in the U.S., Nelson?
I would say so. That's like right on. I mean, especially for somebody that's new to the sport.
Yeah.
It gives them a chance to actually step into it while still being able to enjoy the experience. Usually if you go anything less than $600, yes, you are saving some money, but usually it's at the price of experience, as far as like how you feel on the bike, how the bike rides, what you expect the bike to do may not be fulfilling your needs if you go below that dip. But I always tell people, you know, talk to somebody in a shop first, you know, qualify
versus like buying online.
Right, like at least have somebody evaluate what you want the bike to do, because if you can have somebody guide you as to what you plan to do with the bike, that will keep you from overspending. You know, because everybody wants the Ferrari. You know, everybody wants like the $2,000 bike.
Yeah.
You know, but if you don't need a $2,000 bike, I mean, shoot, if you can spend like $800, that's a lot of beer the rest of that money can buy.
Right?
You know what I'm saying?
And it's also good too. Like if you have an idea of like, I want to spend this much money on the bike, and it turns out that the bike that is the right fit happens to leave some room in the budget, get the good safety equipment, get that high visibility jacket, get that good solid helmet, you know, get the stuff that.
Get that Lycra gear.
Get the Lycra gear. Yeah.
Can I touch on that? Can I touch on that?
Sure, yeah. Go right ahead, Nelson.
So, there was a time where I was against riding road bikes, just because I was like, I don't need that, you know? And when I first experienced a road bike, it blew my mind, and I bought one that same month. However, being that I'm a mountain biker, I was like, I'm just going to wear my mountain bike stuff. I don't need Lycra. And I kept riding with my coworkers and other people and the club rides. And, you know, they would just kind of smile at me. But after a month, it was like, you know what? I'm not improving. I'm going to do what they do. I'm going to eat what they eat. I'm going to wear what they wear. And I'm going to clip in, which clipping in is where you actually are attached to the bike, where your foot is attached to the pedal. And I did all that stuff, but I'll tell you what, when I wore the Lycra, that was the biggest change for the good.
What kind of difference does it make when you're riding?
So I used to ride with cotton,
okay.
And on a hot August day, like cotton gets like soaky and steamy and terrible. When you wear Lycra, it transfers that moisture and your clothes stay dry.
Oh, like runners.
Yes, and because of that benefit, the temperature modulation is even better. You stay cooler, so you sweat less, and you don't get like that resistance as far as pedaling goes.
Yeah.
Because the Lycra sticks to your skin, so there's no like drag from your clothes for motion. Kind of like when you wear baggy stuff, you'll get like that drag, especially when you get sweaty.
Yeah.
Anyways,
So I can see the beneficial if you're a distance rider.
right, exactly. So if you're doing anywhere from like, I don't know, a distance ride for a weekend warrior rider, wouldn't you say Jordan is like 25 miles for weekend warrior?
They're on metric.
I'm sorry. Is that 30 Ks?
Yeah, that's basically like 25 miles is what, like 35, 40 kilometers. So that's the usual kind of
Yeah,
weekend
35,
thing.
40 Ks.
There's some guys that do
Yeah.
like 100-kilometer every ride. Those guys are kind of crazy.
Right.
But there are people out there that do that. But yeah, like your average rider will only be out there for 25, 30 miles.
And I am definitely not like a racer guy, so I don't have a racer body, but I still wear Lycra because it keeps you cool and you don't overheat, and everything feels better,
I've taken the hard road in terms of, because I actually don't ride in like a lot of club rides. I ride mostly by myself or like with a couple of the coworkers here and there, and they'll come out on the rides in Lycra and everything. And meanwhile, I'm wearing like Under Armour golf shorts that are also breathable and like wick the moisture away, but not skin tight. So they keep looking at me like one day. I'm like slowly transitioning, but at the same time like resisting.
I was there. Actually, there's a group that I ride with on the mountain bikes that they wear Lycra, so I ended up doing that for mountain too with certain people I ride with, which is fine.
Yeah,
Nice.
I'm also the guy in the shop that when we went out to ride mountain bikes, I was one of two people who actually clipped in, even though I don't ride mountain bikes. But they're just, how do you do that? I'm like, I feel more comfortable clipped in because I actually feel connected to the bike and can control it, So it's
totally safer.
Ride however you feel comfortable.
That's a great thing to touch on, Nelson, when you just mentioned safety. And usually that's something, let's just talk about the elephant in the closet when it comes to cycling. Some people are deterred from cycling because they're concerned about bicycle safety, right? And if you live like in a major city like Los Angeles or maybe like San Francisco, some people are weary of going in, into cycling because they're also scared of like being hit, by drivers that they have to share the road with. Any advice on bicycle safety and what people should prepare for? Especially, Jordan, you mentioned you were also a bike messenger and both of you ride on the streets. What advice would you give our community on bicycle safety? And whoever wants to take that first.
Well, I always tell people to consult their local bike shop for possible places to ride, because normally everybody in the bike shop, either if they don't commute to work, they ride often, and they'll be able to point you in like the right route for your level, because there are levels of riding that you can cope with. So at the higher levels, when you are more experienced, you are going to be safer in heavier traffic, but you have to have that experience, because there is a flow and there is a tempo that cars and motorists think and how they drive, but I mean, if it is truly a concern, I always suggest going to a local park, or going to where I live. There's all kinds of riding area along the beach, which is traffic free. A lot of the areas in Southern California have a isolated pedestrian lane, so cyclists and pedestrians are even further separated. But I'm sure if you find like a central park, or I know some cities have like areas where you can jog and walk. If it's allowable, you can ride your bike there, usually when it's not crowded. If it's not allowed, I mean, try to go like when it's not crowded, type thing. But you can find a way to ride your bike. If I used to do laps in my neighborhood when I was like, training, so to speak, and just being in the neighborhood was fine too.
Yeah. Would you like to add to that, Jordan?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, like, pretty much just want to reiterate, it's like Nelson hit the nail on the head. It's about like getting out there and actually riding your bike. But before getting into that, the knowledge of where to ride, where to start riding. Local bike shops, like you said, everyone there rides a bike. Everyone probably knows some really good routes or roads to kind of get started on. Heck, when I started even messengering and everything, Google Maps has a filter purely for bike roads and bike paths. So that's a good place to start as well. Because like you said, like there is a flow, there's a tempo, just like when you first started driving a car, if you drive. You practice in the slower roads first before you get into the main roads, before you get onto the highway, right? So you gotta kind of work your way up and graduate to those levels, right? So riding a bike is the same thing. You can start off with the little back roads or alley next to your house, and kind of, if you want to, once you feel more comfortable with that, if you do want to ride in the city, you've always got the sidewalk as an option. Just make sure you're not going too fast for people that are walking. You're giving plenty of room, plenty of space, because we're all sharing the space together. But you can do some research on the bike paths, on the bike friendly roads, because there's almost always a path to get from point A to point B in your city where you can not interact with any cars. Like there's almost always a path. You just got to find it. And like for me, it took me 5-10 years before I figured out the path to get from my house to my work, or to get to downtown Vancouver. And once I found it, that was it. That was like the best route, because it was parallel to the road, but not on the road, as completely protected. And finding those routes is a game changer.
Your dog agrees, Nelson.
Yes.
And some people don't even like to wear helmets because they say it doesn't look cool.
It's
very bad,
right? Have you
very
heard
bad.
That's so common.
Yeah. Wear your helmet.
But that'll save your life.
It will save your life. Like, okay, so folks will say it doesn't look cool and whatever. Like, bike messengers, you'll see a lot of videos of guys on fixies and whatnot not wearing helmets. It's the same thing as skateboarders or BMXers not wearing helmets in the park. Sure, they can, but it's dumb, and they know it's dumb. Any proper messenger or people that are actually professionally riding and riding difficult stuff or dangerous things, always wearing a helmet. Like, professional skateboarders wear helmets. You got to protect your head. I've been in a few accidents now. I've actually gone through 3 helmets in the last 2 years because I've gone into an accident, and luckily I was wearing my helmet. So, yeah, always wear your helmet. Your arms and your muscles can recover. Your brain cells cannot.
Totally. I always tell people it's the slow speed stuff where you're not paying attention is where your helmet is going to help you. Like when you're going fast and you're feeling vulnerable, that's when you're really paying attention. It's not really going to, the percentage of helping you there is not as high as when you're comfortable and going slow and messing around and there's this just reminds me of this trail that I rode. We do this trail in Fullerton, California, called the Fullerton Loop. Mm-hmm. And it is a walk, hike, jog type thing, and it goes through neighborhoods. It's not really a trail per se. I mean, it is a trail, but you have to link all the dirt sections together and get through the neighborhoods. Anyways, there's a part where there's a upper and lower parallel way to go. The upper part is for utility vehicles like, the water trucks and the construction guys. And then the bottom part is a real actual trail that somebody like kind of carved out through the bushes. Anyways, I was going to try to like fake my friends out and like I missed the ride and I got there a little late. I'm watching them ride on the upper part, right? And I was going to drop in on them and be like, hey, I made it, Well, I don't know why, but the utility gate was closed for some reason. And it's never closed, but I didn't see it because I'm looking at them like down, like, 20 feet down. I'm watching the back of their heads, trying to listen to their conversation, seeing if they're like ripping on me, And I'm like just looking at them, and we're probably riding like maybe warming up on our mountain bikes. We're probably doing like 10 miles, 12 miles an hour, like trying to like, and I hit this gate not even looking at it. Not even looking at it. It was it didn't tickle, I'll tell you that. Like this pipe gate. It was just a pipe gate to stop cars from driving it. Anyways.
So lesson.
That's when helmets help you, when you're being stupid. And I had this argument with a guy saying like, I don't need a helmet, I ride safe, and you're not going fast enough to need a helmet anyway. And I looked at him and I said, well, and I was younger and more like abrasive in my younger age. And I was like, the average human can run about 8 to 10 miles an hour. And he goes, okay. I go, why don't you run as fast as you can with your hands behind your back into a wall and tell me like if you're face first into the wall and tell me if like, you don't go that fast on a bike. And then he's like, well, how much do helmets cost?
There you go.
And I showed him a helmet. Dude.
Mic drop.
Totally, right?
Good one.
Yeah.
Anyways.
So, point taken. If you're going to cycle, be safe, y'all.
Yeah. Definitely scope out an area and then, wear the helmet. Get lights. That'll help too. Because you can run those lights in the daytime just like cars do. Anything to help your visibility,
Sweet.
And you're going to need the lights anyway because, you got to go to the grocery store or you're at the bar too late. Got to have lights,
But that's kind of one of the funny things. Like, you're going to leave the lights, but it sucks. But a lot of homeless folks will steal bike lights because they need them.
That's true.
It's a safety thing. They understand that having a light is good, but yeah. Like,
can you get cited
Hmm?
in Canada, Jordan? Or can you get cited for riding at night without lights?
Not that I know of. I'm pretty sure you can, but like I haven't personally. But then again, I don't ride without lights. I feel bad whenever I'm out without a light because it's just
totally
like it's sketch. It's sketch when you're riding a bike at night without lights because
totally.
Like, think of your reaction time and how long it takes to stare at something to see the detail of it in the dark, and that's coming at you at like 20-25 miles an hour. Like, you can't see a thing. If there's a pothole or an obstruction that's there, I'm not going to see it until it's like 3 feet away from me, and by that point I realize it's there. I'm already on top of it. So it's just sketch without a light. Like, what's it called? The couple of times when I've had to actually bike home from like my cousin's house or whatever, and it's nighttime and I forgot my light. Oh man, like the same roads that I would ride on that I'm comfortable with, I've ridden them all the time. Suddenly I'm scared of there being potholes in there, and I'm going a lot slower.
Totally different, right?
Yeah, totally
different road.
You if you can't see it, it's infinitely scarier.
Well, I only ask because down here you can get a ticket from the police for riding your bike without lights.
Yeah.
Although I've never seen or heard anyone do it, I'm sure if they wanted to be enforcement enough, they would do it to you.
I've almost gotten a ticket for riding a bike without a helmet. I was going downhill from a bus stop up at the top of the hill near my apartment. I was riding downhill without my helmet, and police pulled me over a block away from my apartment. And then he's just like, "Hey, where are you headed?" I'm like, "I'm just going home." Like, "Where's your helmet?" I'm like, "Forgot it at home." He's like, "Oh, where's home?" I'm like, "A block down that way. It's that building right over there." Looks at my ID. He's like, "All right, just walk your bike there." I'm like, "Okay, thank you, sir." But
Really?
he was ready to give me a ticket for riding my bike downhill without a helmet.
So here, if you're under 18, you could get cited for not wearing a helmet. But you, as the rider, aren't going to get the ticket. It's your parents that are going to get the ticket.
Interesting.
Yeah, that's a law out here. I mean, at least in California.
And is it true that drinking and biking is also a thing? Like,
Very bad.
you can get pulled over for that too, right?
It's considered
Cited?
your bike is considered a vehicle, so it's a DUI.
Yeah.
Same with a skateboard. You get a DUI on a skateboard because you're on a moving.
Yeah,
vessel.
you're operating a vehicle. You're going faster than you can walking.
Right. Right.
So be careful if you get those beers, y'all, on that ride.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. Totally.
it's not worth it. Don't do it.
All right, we're going to circle back to you both as we start to approach the end of the episode. I know this has been a informative one. I'm curious to know, what are your personal and professional goals when it comes to cycling, if you have any? Where would you like to take it next? Tour de France one day? Mountain biking somewhere else in the world? Who wants to take this?
I can jump in. I mean, in terms of like cycling goals, I've actually accomplished a lot of the stuff that I set out for myself back when I was like getting back into cycling in my like early adult life. I've accomplished what's called the Triple Crown here in Vancouver, where we go up the three main mountains, so the three crowns. So I managed to pull that off on my 33rd birthday, so Triple Crown for 33. And then I also got into being a bike messenger, which was another one of the things that I was like, that would be crazy if I was able to do this. And lo and behold, I was able to do it because, as you ride, you gain confidence, you start to try out all these things. And I also rode from here to Seattle, from Vancouver to Seattle in one ride. So
What?
accomplishing like a
That's
full
right.
century, a double century by metric standards in one ride. So like a lot of those things, I'm like, you know what? I did it. I'm pretty satisfied. But at the same time, I did it. I kind of want to do it again.
And explain to our community what a century is.
So a century is exactly what a century is. It's 100. So there's a thing called a metric century where you're riding 100 kilometers in a single ride. And then there's the classical century, which is 100 miles in a single ride. And it's like, a ride is whether you're doing loops around the block or you're going from point A to point B or you're doing a massive loop around the peninsula or the city. If you manage to pull off, and it's, if it's on Strava, it actually happened. You have it recorded somewhere, you can show that you rode 100 kilometers. That's a century. A lot of beginner riders will hear this term and like, oh, that's crazy. I want to I need to try to do a century. People will train up and like exercise and train for the purposes of pulling off a century because it's not an easy feat. It definitely takes a lot of effort, takes a lot of mental fortitude, and you want to be prepared when you're actually going out on that ride because 100 kilometers or 100 miles is no joke, especially when you factor in things like elevation, because not everywhere is a velodrome, not everywhere is going to be completely flat. So riding 100 miles wherever you are is going to be difficult. You want to make sure you stay hydrated. You want to make sure you have enough nutrition on you, or at least have a credit card so when you stop for a break, you can get some food in you.
Yeah. And Nelson, personal, professional goals within the world of cycling?
Well, I feel like being in this industry already achieved my goal of not working like in an office or desk for my whole life, which is one of the goals I wanted at a really young age. But other than that, I mean, I just recently started watching the Tour de France, and I knew a guy in the industry who did mechanics for one of the teams in the tour for a little bit, and I thought that was like, man, it doesn't get any higher than that.
What do you mean by mechanics?
Like he would service the team bikes for the people that would compete on the tour.
Oh, I see. Yes.
And he would like go with them, like be in the hotels with them, like get the dinners with them, have the travel with them.
Yeah.
Anyways, I mean, I watched the tour and I think that stuff's cool, but I would always think like, who has the time for that? And I wouldn't get clearance codes from my wife for that, definitely. But then I started recently thinking like, there's no team on the Tour de France from the Philippines, and I was like, man, I would totally support them and watch them. And then I started thinking like, man, what if they needed a mechanic? That would be sick, right? To like work on the bikes for Team Philippines or a team from the Philippines in the Tour de France, representing the country. Man,
Hashtag goals.
I mean, if you guys actually start a team anytime soon and you want to try somebody out, give us a call, Jordan or myself, man.
100%,
I mean, shoot,
yeah. Like,
wouldn't that be sick?
Being a pro mechanic, like definitely one of the goals for sure. Like that's
right.
There are videos of pro mechanics in one of the cars trailing right next to a cyclist on the road, leaning out of the window and making adjustments to their bike while they're going like 40, 50 miles an hour. Like that's insane, but it's also super
Totally
cool
insane.
for people that are doing that actually do these things, that like work with these hands, right? Like that is super fun stuff.
I mean, just to be like, I've seen professional events in California, and just to be like in a professional cycling event in California, just being there is like amazing. But to be part of a team like at the world level, that would be crazy.
Yeah,
I don't know. I just feel like.
Yeah, sorry.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I know of there was a mechanic that the shop that I learned from. One of the previous mechanics who had left, I think like the year before, she started off just being on the till, right? Just ringing things through and selling bikes and accessories. And then eventually she learned how to be a mechanic, learned how to build wheels and all this stuff. She was a race mechanic, became a race mechanic for the giant Live team. So traveled Europe and with the racing team, tuning up their bikes, making sure they're all race ready. Was that like actually there and like the cars following them, like, and that's just starting from working on the till. Like it's the world opens up and it's you follow it and you follow your passion. It's amazing.
Totally.
Now, do you both as cyclists follow other cyclists out there? Do you have people that inspire you in this industry, and if so, where are they located and why?
So I have a couple of folks that I follow. I'm not super big on like the professional riders, like guys like Peter Sagan and whatnot. Like those are huge names. They have enough people following. So I typically watch some folks on like Instagram or whatever, or even folks that I used to work with. Like there's this one of the mechanics who used to work in my shop. We hired her just before COVID, and during the interview, she's just like, "Oh yeah, what kind of riding do you do?" She's like, "Oh, I ride mountain bikes." It's like, "Cool. What did you do? What did you do?" Turns out she was the women's national champion of mountain biking from Italy. So like that is cool. And then like taught her how to wrench and everything, and like she's one of the most competent mechanics that I know of. And now she's working for Kask back out in Italy, like for helmets and whatnot, riding the world. If you follow her Instagram, her name's Serena Tasca, but like look her up on Instagram, and she has some crazy she's just traveling to ride bikes in crazy destinations. Like that's what a life.
Wow. What is Kask?
What a life.
Kask is it's another brand that sells helmets and other cycling equipment. So they have
Okay.
an office out in Italy, and that's where she's working.
Really cool helmets.
Really
Yeah.
cool.
And you, okay. And you, Nelson? Anyone that you follow in the world of cycling?
So, I don't per se follow people in general. I mean, shoot. I want to say the last social media I had was Friendster. Maybe MySpace. I had MySpace. Anyways, but I do still keep in touch with somebody at every shop I've worked with. And there are 2 rides that I do from 2 different shops that I still attend. And one is a Monday ride in Huntington Beach. And the other one is a Thursday ride at Fullerton Loop, they're both staples of just training rides of nothing more than just base mileage, which is like upkeep of your fitness, nothing crazy. But I do ride with 2 Filipinos for now. And one was a client that is now a friend, and another one is a client that's also now a friend.
So if people wanted to do community rides with you both, how would they get on that? And find out how to be a part of it?
I would say text me. That's what I would say.
There's not like a forum or anything.
No, I don't have like a forum for these rides. These rides are just so... They've been going on for so long that people just kind of like will come and go as they please, and there's not really a forum, type thing. So.
Were you going to say something, Jordan?
Oh no.
Were you going to... Okay. Well... Okay. For a community who'd like to purchase bikes or get them repaired from either one of you in the future, tell us where they can find you.
You can find the website for my shop. It's just capsbicycleshop.com. That's capsbicycleshop.com. And that's like our website. You can see our service tab. You can see like what bikes that we have on offer. You can actually buy bikes and accessories and parts from that site as well. We have a dedicated e-commerce guy, so like check it out. Message him, let him know that Jordan was the one that sent you.
Nelson?
Yeah, you could have the link to my e-page, or e-commerce page, I should say, where I do sell bikes and bicycle equipment. It is www.police-bikes.com. And I do general bike equipment, not just law enforcement. I mean, the website is just tilted towards law enforcement. But you could also email me at the company website, which is bpopatrol@yahoo.com. So the letters B as in boy, P as in Papa, O as in Oscar, BPO, and then the word patrol @yahoo.com.
Sweet.
And I'd be happy to answer any questions you guys may have.
Cool.
Especially how to start cycling.
That's always helpful to have, right?
Yes.
Before we close, we always like to ask our guests if you have other wellness practices that you'd like to share. Other than cycling, what do you both do for self-care that others might find inspirational? Or is it all cycling?
I also do other things like, I surf, I snowboard, and I do go to the gym as much as I can. But and I play right now I play pickleball, but I was playing a lot of basketball in my younger day, like pickup basketball, but I've just been always a outdoor sports kind of guy. So
yeah, I do. I play video games, so a lot of online video games. But aside from that, what I also kind of low key practice is meditation. just like controlled breathing techniques and stuff. Personally, I found that really helped me a lot because I don't deal with stress all that well, but I found that meditation kind of helps like recenter me and like gets me ready to take on the rest of the day, basically.
Nice. Yes, Nelson.
I forgot. I just started in August Kali Eskrima class, and I am having a great time.
What system do you train in, Nelson?
It is a family with the last name Lantayao, and it's their family style.
Okay.
And it's just very good.
Based in...
we train in Hawaiian Gardens, actually, which is between Orange County and LA County.
Nice. As we begin to close, how can our community find you if they have additional questions? I know, Nelson, you shared your email address. Do either of you have any other ways for folks to get a hold of you if they have questions?
Yeah, you could. I was going to say you can text me at 951-318-7341. That is also my business line. So if you text me or call me, I can definitely help you.
Yeah, my work email is service@captainbicycleshop.com. You could also, hit me up on Instagram. It's just Jord of All Trades or @Jord of All Trades. Yeah, almost always on there.
Nice. Thank you, Jordan and Nelson, for talking to our community about cycling and wellness. We're so honored to have featured you both on our podcast for our community to learn more about the world of cycling. I know I personally learned a lot from you too. We're excited to witness how your journeys continue to unfold and are here to support you as your Pilipinx and Wellness family. And to our community, look out for our next episode. In July, we will be talking with a powerhouse couple, triathlete Raniel Hidalgo and his wife who completed her first marathon, runner Gina Hidalgo. This episode will air during our Wellness Wednesdays on July 12th. As we close, we'd like to acknowledge once again our guest speakers, Jordan Laxamana and Nelson Raboy, our social media strategists, Kathleen Torrio, our graphic designer and beatmaker for our opening and closing track, Ritchie, Khingz and Mic Flont, reigning from the Seattle, Washington area, the Pacific Northwest. For consent to use your track, Honey and Hash, thank you also, Jordan, for that you heard during our break. Our advisors, Allison De La Cruz, Rian De Los Reyes, and Safo Teologo. Our community partners is Filipino American Life, SoCal Filipinos, and Trek Table, and all of our community members for your shares and support. As always, we'll share more about our guest speakers' offerings on our Instagram stories and highlights for permanent access with any of their upcoming events. Be sure to follow us at Pilipinx and Wellness on Instagram, Facebook, and on Twitter. And also you can listen to our episodes on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. On Twitter, we are at Pilipinx, the letter N, followed by the letters and an S. Don't forget to continue to hit the subscribe button on our Pilipinx and Wellness YouTube channel. Thank you always for believing in us. Be well, everyone. Continue to take care of yourselves and each other. Daghang salamat.